Welcome back. Tonight, we continue Yearwalker, a story that grows stranger with every step. If you haven't heard the first part, it's worth going back to catch up. Otherwise, settle in, get comfortable, and let's return to where we left off. The Yearwalker Part 3. The first few weeks I spent with John Digman went by fast. He insisted I quit my job while I was in recovery and offered me a small side gig in the meantime. That doesn't sound all too bad, but at that point, I didn't even know what he did for a living. John has a pretty big property, slightly off the grid. It was originally a ranch, but it was repurposed sometime back in the 70s. It was just down the street from a place called the High House, which is sort of legendary to the locals. John lived mainly in a large single-story home with a sprawling cellar and a separate guest house. I got the guest house to myself, 4 rooms, a bathroom, and a kitchen. It was one of the nicest places I'd ever lived in, albeit a bit beaten up. Excellent Wi-Fi coverage, though. The first time I asked John about what he does for a living, he stone-faced me. He had no idea how to describe it and decided just to show me. He invited me to his workshop. It is hard to describe the vibe of the place, but it was like watching a Rube Goldberg machine designed by H.R. Giger. Thick black cables hanging from the ceiling, plugged into various haphazardly balanced machines. Red lights blinking in repeating patterns, raw circuit boards collecting dust out in the open. Not a single symbol or note or marking. No branding whatsoever. And it was dark. In fact, I wasn't allowed to bring anything that shone in there. Some of the materials he worked with was sensitive to light. He described himself as a hardware test pilot. You know, he said, sort of like the people who fly experimental aircraft. Except I work with circuits, motherboards, semiconductors, computer hardware. So you just test things? Well, I mostly test things I make myself. Used to be more of a developer. He had plenty of posters in the hallway showing some of his previous work. A logo for a dating site called Come Sail Away, reviews of early copies of games like Hatchetman Cove and CH4 Angeling. I couldn't help but notice the logos repeating in the corners, little blue sunflowers. When I pointed at them, he just sighed. Yeah, he nodded, I used to work for Hatchet. They had a software development branch that turned into a hardware development branch, and then I had to call it quits. Hatchet, I said, they got a finger in everything. You have no idea, chuckled John, but yeah, they do. Pretty much everything. You gonna keep me in the dark about it, like you just dropped that bomb on me about the tunnels under Frog Lake? Look, it's not that simple, said John. There is information that, if spread, can literally kill you. I know things that, if I told you about, it could literally end your life. And I'm not talking men in suits showing up at your doorstep. I'm talking your mind unraveling like a ball of yarn and making you drown yourself in boiling cooking oil. Jesus Christ. I want to say our relationship was strained under the weeks I stayed there, but honestly, it was easy to fall into his routine. Got up at 8 every morning, he made me breakfast, checked my blood levels. About once every 2 weeks, he'd run me through a sort of blood plasma machine. It was the strangest thing. I could literally see it filter out black goo, stinking of chemicals. Probably part of whatever bacterial infection hit me earlier. A few weeks into February, I was helping him in the workshop. Mostly doing conductivity tests, as he called them, recording transfer speeds between machines based on different cable compositions. He didn't tell me what the numbers meant, so I just took notes. Was a high number good or bad? I didn't know. It just felt nice having something to do, and it was an easy way to repay him for helping me out. At that moment, he was the closest thing to a family I had. One day in late February, something that hadn't happened before happened. We got a package. It was a pretty small package. Unmarked, hand-delivered in a magnetic black box. I brought it over to John, who immediately pushed me out of the workshop. Even under his sunglasses, that he still used, even in a dark room, I could see him go wide-eyed. He started swearing profusely as he hurried into the kitchen. God damn it, he muttered. Damn it all to hell. I followed him at a distance. He always got a little scary when he was excited. It was as if his eyes got redder and the silver in his hair got more pronounced. There was a metallic tone to his consonants, like the roof of his mouth turned to metal. He ripped open the package to reveal a strange white mask. It had an air filter, a black strap, and was made of a thick ceramic material. I had a vague memory of seeing it on the news. John just looked defeated. "All right, yeah," he said. "The word is out, fuck. Talk to me. It's like the thing you saw at your apartment," he sighed. "There's a few of them out there." "So what are they? Look," he interrupted. "I can't explain all of it. Some things don't happen in the order they're supposed to. Sometimes the cure shows up before the infection. You get the prize before you buy the ticket, and right now, we're getting dinner guests before there's even a restaurant. That makes no sense." "It rarely does." He brought the mask with him as we walked to his car. He double-checked the security cameras, only to notice a few of them were out of working order. Whoever had this delivered did a number on his alarms. John had a bit of a prepper streak, and this wasn't doing his nerves any favors. "You heard about the riots up north?" he asked as he got in the driver's seat. "Some sort of protest, I think." "Yeah, no," he said, shaking his head. "That ain't it." I got in the car, put on my seatbelt, and got the mask handed to me. I looked it over and decided to test it out. As soon as I put it near my face, John slapped it out of my hands. "I didn't tell you to do that," he said. "Why did you do that?" "I dunno. Don't put that on, don't ever put that on. And if you see me put it on, take it away from me. If it bothers you, just destroy it." "Can't do that," he sighed. Then he comes by to get me a replacement. Who's the he in all this? John took the scenic route back to town. It was still early afternoon, just before lunch, and the February weather got a tight grip on us. I could see my breath, even inside the car. I couldn't see John's, though. "Did you know Tomskog High School was spot on for the national average?" he said, right in the middle. Perfectly normal. 20 years ago, it was the actual middle ground. Sounds about right. "So let's say someone wants to try something out," he said. "They want to try something that could impact, say, brain development. Minor bone structure tweaks. What better place to test it than the town where everyone is perfectly average? I'm not sure I like where this is going." "Your dad graduated in 2000, John said, taking a slow left turn. After that, it all went downhill. We came to a long stretch of road. John rolled a window down, letting his hair flutter in the breeze. I didn't understand why he wasn't freezing his ears off. "Hatchet had sort of a development project," he continued. "Minor stuff, nothing like the crazy shit they had back in the 1920s. We're talking the equivalent of putting fluoride in the water. Doesn't sound too bad." "That's what the pitch sounded like," he shrugged. "Anyone would have taken them up on it, especially with the boatloads of bribes that went under the table. But here's the kicker, it wasn't minor stuff. Shocking. It was nasty, dark shit," he laughed. "The kind of shit you drag out of the bottom of Frog Lake. The kind of shit where, if applied to a lab rat, you'd say it was too much. The kind of shit you saw at your apartment. Wait, they tested something on people. Not officially, and not all of them. There was a control group. Your dad was in one, I think. So what happened? They're still trying to figure that out," John nodded. "But let's just say some of those kids never got to grow up, and were no longer the national average. Following the main road past the detention center, the gas station, the lake, we ended up at a parking lot outside the high school." John just sat in the car for a while, taking a few deep breaths. "I need you to make sure I don't fuck it up," he said. "These masks are dangerous." Way to get political. "I'm not fucking around," he groaned. "If they put one on me, I might kill you, you understand." "Game over, end of the line. Who's gonna put one on? Will you please tell me what to expect?" "Look," he snapped. "A man has come to town. He hands these out. Cause the fucker wants everyone to be just as fucked up as he is. He probably sent these out to a few dozen people, maybe more. So what are you going to do?" "We're gonna have a conversation." We stepped out of the car. It being an early Saturday morning, there was no one else around. I was halfway across the parking lot before I even realized I'd brought the mask along. John hadn't told me to, but I still did. There was something about the thought of hiding behind a mask that brought me this intense sense of freedom, and I kinda wanted to try it out. John was vigilant, though, and took it from me before I got the chance. "So how do you know him?" I asked. "The mask guy, I mean." "He was in the same class as your dad," he said. I graduated in '99, he in 2000. The class of 2000. Sounds like a sci-fi movie. That was their prom theme. We walked up to the main doors, shut and locked. John looked around, making sure no one saw us. He brought out a little finger tool with tiny metal spikes and slid it into the lock. Moments later, the door clicked open. "Alarms should be off," he said. "Come on." Trophy cases, graduation photos, inspiring posters, upcoming events after school clubs, it was all there. This was someone's world, and we were stomping right into it. We followed a long hall, our footsteps echoing across the stone tiles. "He's probably out," said John. "But we'll be here when he gets back, and then you'll have a conversation." "That's right," he nodded. "That's all there's to it." As we waited, John had me do all kinds of strange tests. I had to go outside every 15 minutes to make sure it wasn't snowing feathers. I had to make sure the lights weren't broken. I had to make an audible oop noise whenever I entered a new room, like a sonar. I had to check classroom clocks to see if any of them suddenly stopped or if there was a discrepancy in time. At one point, he just freaked out about hearing an old car. It was like working for a skittish chihuahua. We stayed there all afternoon, just going through his checklist. When he finally seemed calm, we settled down in one of the classrooms. It was dinner time by then, but he hadn't brought anything for us to eat. Apparently, he forgot, but I had the distinct feeling there was more to it. I rarely, if ever, saw John eat. At 7 p.m., he told me to turn off my phone. "He's here," he said. "Listen." We positioned ourselves by the classroom door. I could hear footsteps, maybe half a dozen. Some were taking deep, audible breaths. One just tried to stifle a laugh. I could make out a few words, taken out of context. So I just went for it, I went for it. I had to. I had to go for it, went for it. No time like the present. No time, had to try it. I got to them first. They didn't get me, no way, I got them first. John held a finger to his lips. We were waiting for something or someone, maybe for these people to pass through. "Remember," John whispered, "no masks." As the voices passed us by, John peeked out. The hall looked empty, but we could hear the odd ramblings coming from a side corridor further down. "They're going into the cellar," John whispered. "This is bad. I thought this was just a conversation." "Yeah, with him," sighed John, "not his goons." He turned to me and put a hand on my shoulder. "I need you to stay behind and keep the path clear, just in case we need to leave." "Wait, so you wait, and you make sure we can run if things go bad." We followed the hall down to the leftmost wing of the building. At the end was a pair of double doors reaching into a spiral staircase. I could hear strange noises coming from below. John held up a hand, asking me to stop. I was supposed to keep this path clear and alert him if something happened. Mask in hand, John walked down the stairs. I stayed up there, listening and watching. Every little noise made me jump, and I patrolled back and forth, rolling my heel to make as little sound as possible. I took mental notes of various hiding spots, a janitor's closet, a group activity room, and a bathroom. I couldn't help but wonder what his checklist was all about, but there was no point mulling it over. Snowing feathers, making random noises. Time discrepancies. A few minutes passed without a word or a sound. What little I heard came from a wind blowing outside, making the windows shudder. Suddenly, I heard a footstep. Just one. I looked around but couldn't see anything. I walked up to the corner leading to the main hall, then I stopped. I could see the edge of a shadow, slowly moving my way, something just around the corner. I backed away. I wanted to scream for John to run, but I'd be overwhelmed in seconds. Maybe I could scream and then run, maybe hide. Number too close. I heard a painful crack like splintering wood. Snapping, the shadow grew longer, taller, unfolding like a spring twig. I backed away, trying to hold my breath. I fumbled around with my right hand, feeling the wall for the first door I could reach. As soon as I got hold of a doorknob, I hurried into what turned out to be the janitor's closet. I locked the door behind me and took a deep breath. I'd bought some time. I put my ear to the door, trying to hear what the person outside was doing. It was strange, just one footstep every 4 seconds or so. A brushing noise, like long hairs scraping against the wall. and suddenly, a footstep slamming down just outside. I slowly backed away as I heard scratching at the top of the door. Little scrapes, like someone trying to peel the paint off the wall. Then a series of knocks. Tap, 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 tap. I didn't answer. Tap, 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 tap. Seconds passed. Maybe minutes, there was no way for my racing heart to tell. Something started pushing the top corner of the door. With an incredible force, I could see the entire frame starting to bend and break. I ran up to it, trying to push it back. I abandoned all pretense of hiding. This was about winning time. I had to do something. "John," I called out. "John, goddammit, there's something up here." The pressure increased. I pressed back all I could, trying to keep the door shut. My feet were slipping on the floor, and my sweaty hands got no grip. "John," I screamed, "please." I heard a part of the door give way, and the metal bent inwards. I could see something moving as the pressure subsided. It was backing away, giving up. Seconds later, a long arm reached into the hole in the door, holding another white mask. Slightly different from the one John got. An elaborate, smiling white mask. An impossibly long arm reached all the way from the top of the door to my hands, delivering it straight to me with an unceremonious thud. The arm retreated. Those long footsteps kept walking, following the double doors to the cellar below. I just stood there, trying to understand. The mask itself was beautifully crafted, possibly handmade. Little details like wrinkles under the eyes, dimples on the cheeks. I considered trying it out for a while. It was just a mask. What could possibly be the danger? The best part of it was how perfectly it hid the face. It wasn't just a fun party mask. It could hide every identifiable facial trait. There was even a piece of felt over the eyes and ears. With it, I could be truly anonymous. I could rob someone. I could steal a car on an open street. I could beat someone to death with a bat, and no one would know it was me. The thought made me laugh. Then I forced myself to drop the mask. Those thoughts weren't mine. What the fuck? I slowly opened the door. There was no one outside. There were a few scratch marks on the wall, but that was it. Whatever it was, however, was tall and strong. Those doors were reinforced with sheet metal on both the inside and the outside. I hurried down the stairs. I could hear something. Was it too late? Hadn't he heard me? The cellar was pitch black, and I had to feel my way forward. There was a noise coming from further down the hall. The closer I got, the more words I could make out. "Just move on. There's nothing left for you here." "You think it was John. He was talking to someone." "No, she would, so why do you keep?" There was a sudden cough and then nothing. I tried to keep quiet as a weak light turned on down the hall. A flashlight, perhaps. I stopped moving, trying to see what it was. Yeah, probably a flashlight. "Hi there." I turned around to see a young woman in one of those white masks. Less than 3 feet away. If I hadn't stepped back, she would have stabbed me in the stomach. Instead, the point of her knife just scratched my belly button. I screamed at her to stop, but she didn't listen. Disoriented by the dark, I lost my footing. I picked a hall and started running. She followed suit, and I could hear others doing the same. It was oppressively dark. I bumped into the concrete walls and felt pipes brush against the top of my head. At one point, my toe stubbed against a doorstep, almost sending me reeling to the floor. I kept my balance by a hair, then I hit a wall, end of the line. I turned around. There was at least 9 people, the young woman with the knife, a man with a baseball bat, an older woman with what looked like a fire poker. All of them and more wearing these white masks, like an audience of frozen smiles. And in the back, John. He'd put on a mask as well. A flashlight lit me up, like an actor taking a bow. And in the far back, I could see something large moving with a white mask of its own. Something with incredibly long arms and legs. "You here to meet the handsome man?" the young woman asked. "You're not wearing your mask." "I don't have a wait." I was still holding it. I looked at them as they crept closer, circling me like sharks, trying to find an opening. I had no memory of bringing that mask with me. In fact, I was sure I'd left it in that room. I dropped it. I must have subconsciously brought it along. "John, please," I said. I tried to. No response. He just hung his head, bobbing back and forth like the others. He was out of it. He wasn't registering my words. "John?" The young woman stepped up, knife raised. In a last-ditch effort, I raised the mask to my face. The moment I did, she stopped. The mask fit so snugly, it was like wearing a second skin. Instead of a knife to the stomach, I got a kiss on the cheek. People shaking my hand, patting me on the back, a warm welcome. I belonged there. It was a beautiful friendship. I had no idea who they were, and it didn't matter. We were all the same, and we could do whatever we wanted. I could imagine myself running down the street with hapless abandon, smashing cars along the way, dancing naked around a tire fire, cutting someone open and using their blood as war paint. But it wasn't my thoughts, it wasn't what I wanted, but also it was. Why are we? It was so comfortable. I could get lost in it. And for a moment, I did. There was just that one thing, the smell. It had the same smell as that awful black goo I'd gotten sick with the other month. That strange chemical smell that John kept filtering out of my blood. It was faint, but the entire mask was lined with it. That little smell was the last thread connecting me to the real world. The one thing not allowing me to let go just yet. I was standing in the middle of their pack, embraced and welcomed. I had to try something. I focused as best I could, and I could feel a final thought of my own come through. Knock John's mask off, whatever it takes. As I gave up, this violent urge took over. Complete, unhindered freedom. But I brought that thought of knocking his mask off with me, and it burst through my system. I fell on top of John and started to beat his face over and over. He had no way to prepare himself as the others cheered me on. After the third hit, a corner of his mask broke open. The moment it did, I saw something return to him, a semblance of recognition. He head-butted me back, smashing his forehead onto my nose. A crack in my mask, and I felt that smell again. My mind fumbling in the dark, and I got a hold of that thread, a lifeline pulling me back. We kept beating each other over and over, back and forth, until both our masks just fell off. The cheering crowd stopped, having realized we were no longer part of them. We'd moved away from them over the course of the fight, and all of a sudden, we were just standing there looking at one another. John turned to the large being in the back. She's dead, John panted. You know she is. There's nothing left. An impossibly long arm reached out of the dark, scooping up our shattered masks from the floor. He won't bring her back. He can't wish for that. It doesn't work. She's gone. For a moment, we just stood there in the dark, counting our breaths, ready to sprint at the drop of a hat, waiting for a race to start. Just go home, John said. You don't need this. There was a deep groaning noise, slowly rising in volume. The people with the masks mirrored it, turning from a murmur into a violent scream, a desperate wailing. I could see them tremble with rage as they turned to us, weapons at the ready. We ran. They stumbled over each other, trying to get to us first. The young woman was pushed out of the way, and she responded by pulling someone down. The man with the baseball bat just dropped his weapon and burst into a sprint. In the far back, I saw the shape of something tall, flickering from the glow of the flashlight. An insect-like frame, a gray hoodie, long black limbs covered in thick hairs. A face like the white mask, only living, breathing, and moving. An exaggerated parody of a dramatic theater face, with crying eyes and the corners of a mouth bent all the way down. Down the hall, up the stairs. I got up and through the double doors just as John slammed them shut and locked them with his finger tool. "Get the window," he screamed. "Get the fucking window." I wrapped my arm in my coat, smashing the closest window. It was a bit of a drop, but we got out. I don't think I've ever run that fast in my life. Across a football field, through a forest up a hill, we got away. After about half an hour in complete silence, we took the long way back to the car. As we got back in our seats, John brushed some glass out of his hair. He put the keys in the ignition and just breathed. What did they? I started saying. They surprised me. Yeah, but that. What the hell was that? I think he forgot he can't use your wish, said John, to bring someone back. Sounds like someone important. The first woman to ever call him handsome. I nodded as he started the car and backed us out of the parking lot. As he turned right down the main road, he took a deep breath. I owe you one, he said. I think I got through to him, but it was rough. So we did it. I think so, yeah, he sighed. So thank you. We took another right turn and stopped by some red lights. John drummed on the dashboard, trying to get the adrenaline out of his system. I was stomping my feet for the same reason. "The Yearwalk works, you know," said John. "You get something at the end of all this, kind of a wish. And those who know about it, they want it. That's why they're coming for you." "What do you mean, kind of a wish?" "I mean it's not a fucking fairy tale, all right?" John snapped. "I mean I didn't know it'd be this bad. You seem to know a lot more than you let on." "You've stumbled ass first into this," John said. "And there'll be a lot more things coming your way. I'll try to keep you alive, but that thing we met tonight, the handsome man, that's probably the nicest one." John looked up at the red lights. They hadn't turned green yet. He checked his watch and compared it to the clock on the car stereo. There was about a 1-minute discrepancy. "That might be bad," he said. "That might be really bad." The Yearwalker Part 4. Over the coming weeks, John performed several checks to make sure the handsome man had left town. We found a few discarded masks, and we didn't see any people sneaking into the school after hours. That was all John needed to put the whole thing to rest, but it was clear that it put him on edge. He wasn't a frontline kind of guy. I got the sense that something was worrying him. He got more obsessed with keeping time, putting up a clock in every room and having me always wear a digital watch. "If anything, feels out of place, check the time," he told me. "If time stands still, you need to do the same." Trying to get anything out of John was like pulling teeth. He was especially reluctant to talk about the clocks. He kept repeating that the less I knew, the better, and that it might save my life to stay ignorant. That didn't help, though. If anything, it just made it all the more intriguing. I got to spend more time with John, learning more about him and his daily routine. I learned that he only slept 3 hours every night between 2 and 5 a.m. He only ate a single meal, a prepared black pudding that he microwaved in the morning. He also drank a lot of water, like a lot of water. He checked my blood regularly, and I was put through a cleansing routine every 2 weeks. Every time, a thick black goo was separated from my blood cells. He saved it in a small test tube, dated it, and put it in a freezer. "Just in case," he explained, "I have to make sure it doesn't get worse." As February turned to March, things were going pretty well. John started to forget about obsessively checking the time. I was feeling better, and I only had to go through the cleaning routine every 3 weeks instead of every 2 weeks. I had moved on from testing cable compositions to working with a machine learning algorithm. Simple stuff, like explaining if there are any dogs in a picture. Some of the prompts were a bit strange, though. "Can you recognize any items from your childhood?" was one of the strangest, but John insisted that it was just a hiccup. One night, I couldn't sleep. I decided to tire myself out in the workshop and get a head start on next day's work. Maybe I could sleep in if I did. John usually got so anxious about me sleeping more than 6 hours. For someone who never slept more than 3, anything past that must seem like a waste. I put my feet up and leaned back in an old office chair. A cheap plastic one, something out of a public school. Prompt after prompt popped up, hypnotically showing images in a 3x3 grid. Basic stuff like dogs, cars, kids. Every now and then something tricky, like the concept of an ant or an emotion. Then, the click stopped working. I tried to click on the image of an owl, but nothing happened. Strange, something cold crept up my back as I checked my watch. The seconds were stuck. Shit. Shit. I tried to remember what John had said. If time stood still, I needed to do the same. I took a deep breath and held it, listening for movement. Footsteps. I closed my eyes, holding on for as long as I could. Stumbling feet, someone dragging themselves forward. Flailing arms, knocking over an Roman 4 stand, and a box of CDs. Stale limbs crackling from years of inactivity. Dry skin slapping against concrete floor. I could feel myself grow lightheaded. I couldn't hold my breath that long. I imagined seeing the snake monster, the goo man, or the white mask. Anything could have walked into this room, ready to tear me apart. And yet, nothing happened. The moment I stopped hearing movement, I had to gasp for air. I was alone, and time was passing as normal. But something had moved around in the workshop, knocking things over. Something had moved around, blindly, without a word. I brought this up to John at his pudding breakfast. He sighed, waited for his pudding to heat up, and sat me down by the breakfast table. He horked the whole thing down in a matter of seconds. "All right," sighed John, "so you're aware of it, that's bad. What is it?" "Did it talk?" he interrupted. "Did you hear it say anything?" "No, nothing, it just sort of stumbled around." "Wait, are you sure?" I nodded as John leaned back in his chair. I could see something moving beneath his hair. 5 in the morning, and he was already wearing sunglasses. "That doesn't make sense," he said. "It talks, and it isn't the kind of thing to fumble." "So what are we dealing with then?" John fetched a coaster with a little picture of a sunflower, the color of which had faded years ago. "Imagine this is us here," he said, pointing to the flower. "This is our world." He then flipped the coaster, pointing to the bottom side. "But this is also something. The space is equally big, but the two sides never meet. Unless you punch a hole through it, I guess. Sort of. It is not a physical place. It is our world right here, but different. I'm not following." He held up the coaster. "There is only one coaster," he said, "but there are two sides. Both exist at the same time in the same space, but they are vastly different. One side with a picture of a sunflower. One side with nothing but cork and crumbs. So what are we dealing with?" I repeated. "Something from the other side of the coaster," said John. "And it doesn't like to be seen." John had started working on all kinds of countermeasures. Conventional weapons wouldn't do anything, but John had access to all kinds of strange machines. Detectors who seemed to adapt to perceived rather than objective time, for example. I was given a sort of black hood that I could pull over my head. He argued that if the thing couldn't see whether I knew it was there or not, it might hesitate to attack. He needed confirmation that we were dealing with whatever he had in mind. Then there was some guy. I try to give accurate accounts of my time in Tomskog, but this guy. I don't have a clear memory of him. It was someone that John asked to come over to help in the workshop for a few days. I can't remember his face, his voice, his mannerisms. It's just a void. I don't even remember if it was a guy, might have been an old woman for all I know. I just remember someone being there. We started spending more time in the workshop. Day in and day out, we worked on the various gadgets. Menial labor, seemingly just to keep us busy. Checking cables, running diagnostics, salvaging old circuit boards. For 3 whole days, all we did was work, eat takeout, and check the time. Every hour, John tested the alarms. A piercing red light came on whenever a watch detected interference. It was so strong that it burned my eyes. By the 3rd day, we were all a bit out of it. Not John, though. He seemed to operate fine without sleep. All he needed was his microwaved pudding and buckets of water. He'd sit there for hours, reading code that was seemingly written in another language. It was strange. The text went from left to right, then sometimes right to left, being written on top of existing code. Sometimes, the code was written vertically, cutting off horizontal lines. I'd never seen anything like it, and couldn't even begin to imagine learning it. Then, out of nowhere, the red light came on. We had practiced this. We put on our black hoods, we took shallow breaths, and waited. John had made a sort of camera, automatically taking pictures about once every relative 2 seconds. It was a way for us to hear that the danger had passed and get confirmation about the assailant. The camera was reverse-rigged to only work when there was a disturbance, so when it stopped clicking, we were out of danger. The camera clicked, and I heard that shuffling noise again. Footsteps, more than one this time, at least half a dozen. I tried to keep still, but I was close to flinching when something brushed against my shoulder. I wanted to scream so bad that my lungs hurt. It was something cold. The guy was sitting across from me, and he audibly gasped. Suddenly, every bit of movement in the room focused in on him. He panicked. There was a burst of movement, knocking both me and various equipment over. I just curled into a ball and tried to keep still. I felt feet bumping into me as a small crowd hurried past me. I remember him screaming something, screaming at me to do something, but I can't remember what. His screams grew lighter and lighter until finally they stopped altogether. There was an awful fleshy sound, like skin being torn apart, bones breaking, sinew snapping like tense rubber bands. Something warm was spreading across the floor, and the guy had gone completely silent. I expected a click from the camera, but nothing came. I couldn't feel the warm glow of the red light anymore. I don't. John, at the other side of the room, was at a loss for words. What the fuck was that? The workshop was fine overall. A few boxes knocked over, but nothing on the floor. The guy was gone. I remember feeling strange, like I was confused about not remembering him. I remembered so little that I wasn't even bothered about him being gone. John, on the other hand, was panicking. That wasn't it, he screamed, checking his cameras. That was what the fuck? He slapped a box of cables, sending it sprawling across the floor as he dug his fingers into his scalp. It's supposed to be one, just one, and it doesn't stalk you, it doesn't come back. That was way more than one, I added. I don't know what, look, I've seen a lot of things, John said, grabbing my shoulders. But this, whatever the fuck that was, I don't know. John got nothing on the cameras. He pored over them all through the night, forgetting to heat his pudding in the morning. I just sat beside him, quietly, waiting for the adrenaline to pass through my system. Sometime in the early morning, I must have passed out in my chair. It was almost lunchtime when I woke up. They're not attuned, he said. They're not part of the other side. Huh. The coaster, he said, tapping his temple. Remember the other side. They're not part of it, that's why the cameras didn't get anything. Wait, so, what? They're from here, John said. Somehow they're from our side. I don't know. So what do we do? I asked. What's our move? John leaned back in his chair and took off his sunglasses. He buried his face in his hands. I don't know, he sighed. I don't fucking know. I stayed in his workshop all day, drifting in and out of exhaustion. I had a hard time closing my eyes, imagining the light turning red. I listened so hard for the camera to start clicking that I jumped at every noise. My nerves were shot to hell, and the clatter of John's keyboard didn't help. Later in the afternoon, as I drifted out of a stress-induced nap, I let my mind do the talking. What happens to the people it catches? I asked. What? You said it doesn't want to be seen, so what happens if you see it? Usually, it tears your head off. It what? It tears your head off, John repeated, and it keeps you in this sort of quantum semi-realm. Time stands still, so you don't really die, you just lose your head. What the fuck? That's why I didn't want to tell you. If you know about it, you can see it, and then it kills you. But you already seem to know, so at this point it doesn't matter. I took a short walk to clear my mind and get something from the kitchen. John didn't keep much in the way of snacks, but I'd stocked up on power bars and sugar-free cola. I could get a pot of coffee brewing. I had to get something. I was running on fumes. John might not need much sleep or food, but this was one of the many ways we were different. I collapsed at the kitchen table, chewing on a stale piece of fudge. I was tired of feeling scared. I was shivering, but it wasn't even cold. I shook so much I bit my tongue. Frustrated, I threw the fudge across the room. Looking out the kitchen window, I saw someone. There was a person, 20 feet from the window. A young man wearing a red summer jacket. He didn't have a head. I hadn't noticed the clock stopping. I just froze, staring at the thing outside. A person without a head looks so weird, the silhouette just looks off. It hit me just how alien it felt. It didn't see me. It couldn't hear me. I moved a little and saw it twitch to life. An arm shot out in my direction, and one of its legs moved. It had to be the vibrations. Maybe it didn't know if I could see it, but maybe it could feel the vibration of sound and movement. After what felt like minutes, it was gone with the blink of an eye. I hadn't even noticed I was holding my breath. My hands were curled into claws. I ran out of the kitchen, leaving the fudge for the ants. I hurried back into the workshop, my eyes struggling to stay focused. John looked up at me, confused. It's the victims, I said. It's not the thing that kills them, it's the victims. That doesn't make any sense, he said. Why would they? He put a finger to his lips. I could see the cogs turning behind his eyes. Hold on. He brought out a notebook and a pen. So here's the thing, he said. You're doing the Yearwalk. At the end of the year, you might get something similar to a wish. It's not all that clear. But here's the thing. Things are crawling out of the woodwork to kill you. The thing in your bathroom, at your apartment, at the school, They all have their own agendas. But there has to be a common reason. It has something to do with me. The wish, he said. I think if they kill you, they get your wish. For a solid minute, John just looked at me. I could see thoughts fluttering in his mind, like he was calculating something. His eyes kept drifting around the room, looking for something. He shook his head. That's it, he said. That's why they're coming for you. That's why the victims are coming for me, I said. They want to wish themselves alive. Or dead, nodded John. That has to be it, that makes sense. Barely. John got up from his chair and fetched his car keys. I could see the excitement return to his face. I know what to do, he said. Let's go. We ran outside, only stopping to open the gate and lock down the house. John started the car, and I jumped in as it rolled up next to me. I hadn't jumped into a moving car in a few years. The thing that killed them, he said. We haven't seen it. It isn't there. It doesn't follow them. Well, it doesn't need to kill them twice. And they're scared of it. They're scared of the other side, right? It's a theory. So we need to keep you near something that scares them. Something from the other side. And I suppose we took a sharp left turn, and John threw himself on the brakes. The entire road, full of standing, headless corpses. I couldn't hear the engine over my beating heart. I got hyper-aware of my hands, trying to find something to do. Something to grab, something to defend myself with. It felt like the seatbelt was choking me. John just stared, dumbfounded. We gotta, yeah, Then they started running. Bodies piling on top of each other. Men, women, children, old and young. Broken bodies and discolored skin, wordlessly sprinting towards us, crawling over one another. The entire road was covered with them. There was no way for us to get through. John put the car in reverse, turned, and just took off. The engine struggled, and for a second, it sounded like it was about to give in. Hands smattered against the windows. One of them tried to crawl up on the trunk. The clock stood still. Come on, John screamed as he punched the dashboard. Come on, more of them grabbed on. Dead fingers curling around the edges of the bodywork, trying to hold us back. Not a word. The car lurched forward as the car got loose. John just screamed as we shot down the road, leaving them in the rearview mirror. Moments later, the clock started ticking, and they were gone. I could see John sweating. Not much, but a little. Old black drops falling from his brow, much like the goo he extracted out of me whenever we did the blood cleanse. Oh my fucking God, he screamed. Jesus Christ, I just cheered, all the tension releasing. There'd been so many of them. So many. But it made sense. This happened outside of linear time, and no one seemed to remember the victims. How would we notice an enormous amount of dead if we can't remember them? A silence settled on us as we kept going down the road. My breathing slowed. I kept looking back at the clock, just to make sure it moved. Where are we going? I asked. You're gonna have to stay with a friend of mine for a while, he said. At least until they stop bothering us. A friend? I asked. Who is it? I set up the Wi-Fi for his mom, and a firewall, John said. He doesn't get out a lot, and you think being around him might scare them off. Hell, it can scare me off. As we got out on the highway, John relaxed. He patted me on the shoulder. Look, I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. This is a bit of a Hail Mary, he admitted. This guy is a bit of an odd one out. That concludes this part of Yearwalker. The path only gets stranger from here. If you're following along, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next step in the journey. Until then, take care and keep your eyes open.